I was saying, we might as well let everybody listen to this. I mean, shit, it's 7.
All right, I'd just like to welcome everybody
Oh.
to another live with Jamie Lewis. Remember to add your comments and questions to the chat, and we will get to them. How's your week been, mate? We've had a bit of a soul-searching philosophical discussion before we even got this started tonight, and Jamie was like, oh, maybe we should turn this camera on and just listen to people, let people just listen to the quiet desperation of our lives, the people that the things that people don't get to see behind the content grind and the desperation of our poor existence. So
our poverty.
This podcast might turn into something totally different tonight, and I've got the tissues ready if need be.
I don't think it's going to be that, because this story that I have to tell everybody is way too fun.
Yeah, well, you're going to lead us down the rabbit hole of a world that I know absolutely nothing about, and that's always been the very tangential to the world of bodybuilding in many ways, and that is wrestling, in particular the gym in Plymouth, Minnesota, which apparently spawned.
It's literally parts of bodybuilding. Like, you can't. I mean, it is a profession for bodybuilders to like support themselves. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of bodybuilding. You can't say that it's tangential. Like, isn't it bodybuilding in motion? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially pre-Wheeler, I guess, as well. And, you know, Vince McMahon obviously tried to get it going with his WBF in the late 80s, early 90s. But then we all know how that ended up as well. So
it was a great idea. And people really enjoyed being professional bodybuilders for 1 year. They made money, too. They flew. Do you know they flew them around first class? Like, they don't fly the wrestlers around first class. So the wrestlers in the WWE at the time are driving themselves places. And these dudes are flying first class. It's wild. But yeah, so there was a gym in Plymouth, Minnesota, which is outside. It's a suburb of Minneapolis. And it was called The Gym. So for anybody who has seen RoadHouse, with the RoadHouse and it with the new RoadHouse, this is literally what we're talking about here. So there's the gym where everybody works out, and then they all work at a bar called Grandma B's, which was a honky tonk like RoadHouse in that, and it was filled with the most humongous people you've ever seen. I mean, what is the biggest gym you could think of, or like what's the gym that has the most jacked people you could think of?
probably Gold's Gym or World's Gym in Venice Beach, California.
Okay, yeah. So you got Gold's Gym, and then out of all the people in the 80s who are training there, like, there probably aren't. There's Lou Ferrigno, who's 275 in the 80s, who's out there. But who else is there? Like, Tim Belknap is filled with fucking insulin, so he's over 250. But that's about it, right? I mean, there's not a lot of 250-pound guys. But then in this gym, you've got Hulk Hogan, Jesse the Body Ventura, the Demolition. So that's Hawk and Animal Warrior. Those guys are both over 250 pounds. And now I'm going to get into wrestlers you probably never heard of. But there's Kurt Hennig, who was 6'3", 260 pounds, and his dad, who was the same size. Ravishing Rick Rude, who was shredded, dude. Have you seen pictures of Ravishing Rick Rude?
Yeah, I put him doing the ab shot on the thumbnail of this video. I have heard a lot of these guys, but I just don't know like their intricate kind of backstories.
Okay, well, this is I don't know if this is going to interest you at all, but like, so they were in they all went into this wrestling organization that was based in Minneapolis, which is why Hulk Hogan's there. Rick Martel was there. Brady Boone Peters was there, who's 5'10" and 200 pounds. There was another guy, Tom Zenk, 6'2", 230. John Nord was 6'8" and 323 pounds, the Berserker. He's half Thor size. Nikita Koloff, who is an American guy who so bought into his gimmick, he became fluent in Russian, then became a Russian citizen. That dude's 6'2", 275. So all these guys are humongous. Demolition Smash was there. He's 6'2", 300. Scott Norton is 6'3", 360 pounds, and that dude was in Over the Top. So he was a pro arm wrestler who went into bouncing and pro wrestling. But all these guys and the Road Warriors are all training in the same gym at the same time. So I've never heard of a gym that has this many 500-pound benchers. But basically everybody I just mentioned benches between 500 and 600. I think Rick Martel was in the 400s. Ravishing Rick Rude benched 405 for 3. But I mean, these dudes were way more jacked and way stronger than anybody who was training at Gold's at the time, I think.
Yeah, why were they attracted to this particular gym? Because obviously Minnesota doesn't have great weather, and was it a wrestling gym as well as a strength gym? What was the attraction there?
Oh no, here's the fun thing. So my wife she was a pro wrestler, and one thing I didn't realize until I was married to my wife is that pro wrestlers, almost to a person, are drama nerds who learn to lift weights after they go through the drama nerds are like to hurt themselves, who eventually go and lift weights. And because I came up when I did in America with these guys, I thought wrestling was about lifting as many weights as you could and then hurting people, but not like trying to hurt them permanently for other people's entertainment, which is what these guys were doing, right? So these guys were not wrestlers. They were just bouncers at a honky tonk. And a honky tonk is like in that movie RoadHouse. It's a bar that's like a really rough and tumble bar where they play country and rock and roll, and then people beat the shit out of each other to music, and then the bouncers beat the shit out of them. So these guys were in the parking lot fucking people up every night. Like they would go to, and they would like the Road Warriors, for instance, they didn't even start at Grandma B's. They got recruited to Grandma B's through the gym. So like this guy, Eddie Sharkey, who was the booker for the AWA, which was a competitor to the WWE at the time. That's why Hulk Hogan's there, Jesse the Body's there. They had all the biggest and most jacked people. And that's why they were all training at this gym, because the AWA is based in Minneapolis. The gym was the best gym in Minneapolis. And it recruited every fucking maniac that this place could produce. And you wouldn't know this, but Minnesota and Minneapolis in particular is one of the fittest cities in America. It's like Minneapolis and Denver are the two fittest cities in America. So they have the most gyms. The people are the most active. Like everybody there is hitting the weights, I guess. So yeah, I can't believe that this story's never been told, because these guys were huge.
It could be its own TV series, it sounds like. Hey, mate, can you hear me?
Oh, fuck. Now I can hear you. Sorry, the internet got a little wonky there.
Oh, I was saying it could be its own TV series, it sounds like. But so when the guys were in this gym, was this pre-fame, or were they also famous while they were in the gym, or once they became somebodies, they then had to move elsewhere? Or I don't know the wrestling dynamic too much of how it all works.
So they started. There were all. Here's the crazy thing, and I've got a picture that I'll send to you. They were a bunch of them. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Rick Rude, Tom Zenk, Kurt Hennig, who's Mr. Perfect, the Barbarian, Nikita Koloff, Barry Darsow, and Battle Cat Brady Coon. They all went to high school together. They wrestled together. They were all born in the same year, and most of them died almost at the same time, like right around 2000. OD on Coke, OD on GHB, which that's one you don't hear often, but there's a bodybuilder for you if you ever heard of one. Rick Rude, GHB OD. Yeah, they all died around then, or they're crazy and like stuck in assisted living facilities.
Were there any really good stories that got produced from all these guys interacting together? Because you know how like World's Gym or Gold's Gym has, a slew of stories that could fill a book. Is there the kind of
so the way the Road Warriors met, and I don't know if you know the Road Warriors, but their traps are up to here. Like they really inspired me to like start doing shrugs heavy, and so they both benched. One of them benched 550 in a competition with his whole face broken. His orbital bone was broken. His cheekbone was broken. Everything smashed. He benched 550 in competition, and so these guys are maniacs. And that guy, he was benching. He was incline benching 365 in the and the other dude just walked up and slapped the shit out of his chest. And he racked the weight. And they both started laughing and then became friends, because they were like, I guess it was they've been staring at each other across the gym, and it was one of those like they had to be friends, or they had to fuck or fight, and they decided to fuck, I guess.
And sorry.
Well, so these guys were renowned, like pretty much all of them were renowned for being psychopaths. Jesse the Body Ventura was an underwater demolition tech. As I'm sure you know, he always brags about being a Navy SEAL. but so was Eddie Sharkey, who was the promoter who like recruited all of them. He was also the bartender who worked at this bar. So he was an old head wrestler who had started out in like carnival wrestling and shit. He was a literal hooker, like fish hook you, gouge your eyes, fucking maniac carnival wrestler. So he is the leader of this band of fucking maniac bouncers who are beating the shit out of people all the time. And the Road Warriors were notorious for fucking people up in the ring. Like they worked stiff, but it was past working stiff. Like they would just work shoots all the time. So they would go into a territory. They would refuse to drop the strap unless somebody like actually beat them up. And they would send in the hardest dudes they could to like actually, this was like practically an MMA fight. And these dudes would just press slam them, slam them on the ground, stomp on their heads, filled with cocaine. I mean, took so much cocaine. It was just cocaine and D-ball is what they lived on all day long. And their workouts were seriously just bench presses and shrugs as heavy as they could go. Like these people were everything we ever tried to be as like lunatic lifters. These guys were that. These guys were the archetype of psychopath. They lived that shit.
Has wrestling, is it similar to bodybuilding these days and that there's been a bit of a decline in the quality of the sport, or is wrestling still as it ever was and is still as good as it ever was? Because I don't really hear too much of it either way. I'm very outside that world.
I've never been a fan of wrestling. I like lifting weights. I don't enjoy soap opera storylines, so it's never been my thing. But I don't think it's worse. People don't like it because they took out the steroids, but I mean, you still got boogs like filled with insulin, weighing 300 pounds, like practically trying to have a heart attack in front of everybody. So like, it's still there. I don't think the aesthetic's not the same. The guys aren't nearly as big. I mean, they aren't as big as the 1940s wrestlers that I found. Those guys who couldn't go into the NFL.
The Rock is natty. Yes, he's never really kind of copped to the whole steroids thing, has he, The Rock? He denied has been his modus operandi the complete time, but far out.
People fucking love to whine about that. It's like, what would it benefit him to say, yeah, I'm on gear? Like, what good does that do him? And where does that improve his life in any way, shape, or form? It's not going to get him any more money. It's not going to get him any more respect. It's going to make a couple of fucking incels on the internet happy. Fuck them. Like, who gives a shit? Like, so they'll be a little happier while they're cleaning their guns before they take them to school? Fuck, eat shit. Like, I don't give a fuck. Really, do you think there's going to be benefit to him being like, yeah, I take this and that and blah, blah, blah. Who cares?
Yeah, I think because almost it's kind of become a little bit like de rigueur these days of celebrities coming out and basically sort of saying, oh, like with different podcasters and Rogan and whatnot, sort of leading the charge, saying, oh yeah, I'm taking tests and growth hormone and that. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. He's got absolutely nothing to gain by admitting it, so everything to lose.
Also, again, he's smaller and less lean than like Sailor R. Thomas. Like Sailor R. Thomas was 6'5", 275, and he didn't even have a fucking refrigerator. Like the man was eating cold fried chicken and sleeping on park benches, 6'5", 275. Like, I don't want to hear that you can't do it without steroids, because you can. So The Rock could be natty. I mean, Mike O'Hearn could be natty. He has not increased in weight in his adult life. He's been 250 pounds for like 40 years.
Yeah, very true. Justin Paul says, I'd like to go a step further than making a TV show about the gym and just make it a TV show about the entire territory era of wrestling. So does that mean something to you?
They have one. It's called Tales of the Territories.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, like I like learning about it.
I don't know if that's... Wrestling is fascinating to learn about. It's just not interesting to watch.
Yeah. But it's even the same with UFC. Like I used to follow it at the beginning when it first came out, but I've since lost kind of interest with it over the years. I just disconnected from it. But I still like learning about all the different guys that are in it. Like I'll read their biographies, I'll read up on the sport, but I don't actually watch the actual events. But yeah. Speaking of stupid fun, Jamie and I both had to literally turn our brains off this week and watch the new version of RoadHouse. What did you think of it, Jamie?
Well, I mean, number one, we had to do it because it's a cultural icon, and number two, we had to do it because the tie-in to this was so perfect. So, but like, could you imagine how quickly Conor McGregor would have died in this if this crew of maniacs had been working at that bar? They would have just stood there and pulled his arms and legs off to get like as a goof, or like just having fun. The dude weighs like what, 190 pounds?
He's not looking too well recently as well, because he was on some interview the other day with Jake Gyllenhaal and they were promoting the movie. And Connor, he was tweaking. He was looked like he was coming down off some bad shit or something, because now every YouTube channel was talking about how Connor was quote unquote ODing live on air, because he was kind of skitzing out a bit and he had this uncontrollable twitch to him. I don't know if other people have seen it or if you've seen it, but he was kind of entertaining in the film. I'll give you that. But yeah, he would get dismantled by the those actual wrestlers.
I don't put a lot of stock into what the internet sleuths are saying these days, because a lot of them are fucking stupid. So, but Connor on meth, he may be. I mean, I didn't see the interview, so I can't say. But maybe he did. Maybe somebody said to him, he was at a party and somebody said, "Oh, you should try meth. It's better than coke. You get more bang for your buck." And that was the one time he tried it. Because we've all done that, and it's not more bang for your buck, and it's not a good time. It's not. It's not. I don't recommend it.
What about the actual film itself? You know, because like you said, it was based on a cultural icon, which we've basically. I've never even seen the original. I watched the original straight after watching this one, just the first 20 minutes. So
you missed nothing. You missed nothing. I watched the whole thing. I put myself through the whole fucking thing yesterday because I held up my end of the bargain, unlike some people.
Me being able to watch TV these days with the limited hours, I think because it's just a mission impossible these days. But I wasn't expecting Lord of the Rings or anything, but I don't know. I know you really enjoyed it. Give me your take on it.
Well, I enjoyed the new one. I want to be very clear about that. I had never actually seen the old one all the way through. I think it was one of those things where I was like, as a kid, I saw it and it was like, that movie's trash, and then just put it out of my head. And people get very mad about it. I say the same thing about Big Trouble in Little China. Fuck those movies. The 80s movies are mostly shit. And that movie was bleak. It wasn't fun. There was no hook. You said it had more heart. Yeah, it had a little bit more heart, but like, everything about it was like tinged with that like 80s evil, where they're just like malicious for, leaded gasoline still happening. And so I don't know. It wasn't for me. But the new one I thought was fun. Jake Gyllenhaal's fucking ripped. He played a badass really well. I think he plays like the smiley psychopath really, really well. So I really enjoyed it.
It was like that character from Nightcrawler transplanted into this film, where he's now suddenly in the best shape of his life in a dumpster fire of a film. But it's kind of funny because I just didn't understand the connection to the original RoadHouse. I know they had the same names and whatnot, but a RoadHouse in my mind is like a bar in the middle of nowhere connected to somewhere like a road. And I don't know if they were just trying to be ironic by calling this yuppie tiki bar the RoadHouse, but I couldn't quite see the connection with the original film. If this film was just its own intellectual property in its own right, I could understand where they were going with it. But to me, the whole thing, it just seemed like that it was written by AI and directed and starring cocaine, because everybody just seemed like they were just completely off their nuts with this entire film. Jake Gyllenhaal being the exception, but even he just seemed like he was phoning it in a little bit.
I can see that. I mean, I will say that the fight scenes between him and Conor McGregor were so long, I actually got bored. Conor doesn't have a cocaine addiction; he just likes the smell. The fight scenes were absurd because it's just they just kept going back and forth on, like, you can't get in a fight and do like it just doesn't work like that. You can't get beaten up over and over and over day after day and continue to fight. And like, nobody's limping, nobody's doing anything. Like, this guy's been stabbed in the side and he's just punching people with that hand like he never got stabbed in the side. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that it was a perfect film. It was just an entertaining film. Like, I wasn't expecting anything stellar. It was an Amazon Prime movie.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was just mainly the connection for the original RoadHouse for me, because I just sort of think that whenever they take these 1980s films and then they try to remake them or reboot them in some way, they don't understand that these 80s films, as you said, they're like a product of their era. So, like these are films that we grew up with. And remember back in the cinemas back in the day, we used to cheer and clap and applaud and yell things
Mm-hmm.
out at the screen. These days, when you go to the cinemas, apart from everybody else on their fucking phone, people are just sitting in little groups having a conversation, not even interested in the film anymore. So again, that whole experience of going to the movies is ruined. So when they try to reboot, and they're just cash grabs. Like I said, they could have just made this film on its own merits and called it fucking something else. But like the fight scenes as well, I read that they used some kind of special technique, because I was thinking the fucking fight scenes look a bit weird to me. They just were off to my eye. So I kind of investigated.
There was some kind of, like, because I noticed it when it was a fun who was that, Action Bronson, or not Action Bronson, the fat guy, the rapper. Yeah, like in his fight scene, it was the first time I noticed it. Whatever you're talking about, they used an AI blur or something to make it look like he was making contact when he was coming through with his right. And yeah, so I know exactly what you're. Yeah, they CG, and then when Jake Gyllenhaal gets hit by the truck, first off, that truck moved way too fast. Like, this is like a 1990s shitbox pickup truck. Why is it driving like it's fucking going 1,000 miles an hour? So I fell you on that one. Like, the movie had problems. It was not, but I very much enjoyed it. I've seen it twice in the last weekend. So pain don't hurt.
The original had all these cool, quotes like "pain don't hurt," and the one that everyone is spewing that wasn't in the new film was, "You look like the sort of guy that I fucked in prison," or something like that. I can't remember now. It's the quote has escaped me, but Connor should have put a little spin on that. Like, "You look like the sort of guy that I used to fuck in the UFC." They should have just leaned into and made it more of a comedy than, I don't know, like Deadlift Dad has said here. Connor was basically playing himself.
Oh yeah. Connor was definitely playing himself. And I see what you mean about the reboot issue. The only good reboot, well, I won't say the only good reboot. There have been a couple of good reboots, but they're usually in horror, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first Evil Dead reboot was so fucking good with Fede Alvarez, and Fede Alvarez is doing the new Predator movies, which is going to be so fucking dope. But yeah, like Red Dawn, for instance. So the original the original Roadhouse film had basically the entire cast of fucking Red Dawn in it, and I loved Red Dawn as a kid, and I think they both came out at the same time. Like the guy who owned the bar, Red, he is a guy who owns a gas station that gives them supplies in Red Dawn, and like they almost played the same fucking role in those movies. And I loved the original Red Dawn, but the new one was fucking horrific. But that one was marred more by politics than it was by a cash grab, I think.
There was another film, I think.
Damien, what did you feel about the quote about him having a girl name? I didn't understand him having a girl name, because Elwood is not a woman's name. So I was like, what? That was a weird ass comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people have said to me I have a girl name all the time growing up, and that's why my face looks like it does. I've been punched a lot. Done a lot of fighting.
There was a film after Red Dawn called Steel Dawn. Did you ever get to see that one? That had Patrick Swayze in it as well. I don't know if they're related, but just imagine I'm seeing Patrick Swayze.
They're totally unrelated. Oh yeah, Steel Dawn was a really terrible. It was a really terrible post-apocalyptic movie. I've seen it, but I don't really remember it. I was more of a fan of like Robot Jocks and Robot Wars from my post-apocalyptic movies.
Interesting connection, because I know that Jake Gyllenhaal, one of his first breakout successes was Donnie Darko, and Patrick Swayze also starred in that. So there's kind of like that crossover there in time. But it's kind of funny because, I was never really, like yourself, I was never kind of hashtag crazy about Swayze, but he was quite diverse when you look at his film repertoire, because, he back in the 80s, he taught us how to dance, how to surf, how to do pottery, how to skydive, how to do gay sex. He was all across the board with his film roles. It was definitely not a one-note actor like Jake Gyllenhaal.
he really is. He really was a talented man. I didn't realize that he was so into like martial arts. I didn't know that movie was actually such a hardcore action movie growing up. I didn't know much about it. I'd only seen little bits of it, and I was like, fuck that movie. Um, but uh, but yeah, going back to your statement about the Roadhouse, it's crazy that people who made that movie apparently don't know what a honky tonk is. Like, so a
Really?
honky tonk is a very specific type of bar that they had in America. I'm sure. What was the Australian version of a honky tonk? Like the bar where they just play raucous music and they expect like men to fight, get drunk and fight at this place.
I think that is literally every bar in Australia. We don't classify them. We just call them pubs. And anywhere you go, you can make violence and fights and yeah, lots of manliness.
Yeah, it's kind of. But it should have that old west vibe, like almost like those flappy doors at the front, like right when you go in, like they're looking at the new people, sizing them up. Like that's the kind of bar that you're in, and this bar, like you said, it's a tiki bar by day. Like there's a little college kid bouncing there. Like there should have been. So, for instance, this the bar where these guys bounced, Grandma B's, the gym guys. So they had a Hell's Angels club that was like within a half mile of that bar. So it became a biker bar, but they had to enforce this no colors rule. So you couldn't wear your motorcycle colors in the bar, or else the bouncers would fuck you up, and they'd have to fuck people up. So people would come in, because filled with meth and wearing their colors, and these guys were in the parking lot fighting literal felon bouncers, or not felon bouncers, felon bikers. Like these are meth addicted bikers who are probably also like people from Vietnam with PTSD and heroin addictions, and like any number of horrible things could have befallen these guys. It was the beginning of the AIDS era. They could have been stabbed with AIDS needles. And they were just out there brawling everybody.
It's like an idea for you could dive into the lifting lifting routines of these guys and write a whole book on it as well. It could be like something that's a little bit
I have a friend who was in the WWE, and he knows the Power Warrior, the Japanese guy who was like their tacked on addition to the Road Warriors. And he got there, like he asked him about their workout. They literally only did shrugs and bench press. They did nothing else. Like early on at the gym, they would squat and stuff. But if you ask any pro wrestler of that era, they were really about vanity muscles. So it was buys, tries, pecs, delts, not even a lot of back usually for most of the guys. Conor McGregor is doing a great job reminding us the Irish can be violent thugs. Yeah, but if Conor McGregor had walked into the Grandma B's, it would have been like the Hulk grabbing Loki and just smashing him from side to side like this stupid human. Like, he wouldn't survive. He wouldn't have made it 5 feet in the door. Conor McGregor would have just died in this bar.
What do you think of him anyway? He's definitely made some physique improvements over the last couple of years.
I mean, he looks great. His pecs are really high, which is the thing that I've been like obsessed with. Is like my delt arm tie-in and getting my pecs higher, and like so I was really impressed with his high pecs. But yeah, he's not a very big dude. I mean, he's only like what is he 5'10", 190 pounds? I mean, I'm 5'4", 190 pounds.
5'8", mate. He's only very short as well. He's not a big guy. But what was really funny is how he walked around the film like this. The entire film, he looked like he was like carrying 2 suitcases around with him the entire time.
Yeah, he didn't look that big to me. I mean, he looked good, but Jake Gyllenhaal was shredded. Let's talk about that. We're in the Wegovy era when everybody looks like a fucking deflated balloon, and they're just gonna fly away like a kite on all their loose skin. And that motherfucker's in there just like the leanest dude, leanest. And Swayze was shredded in that original John, but he didn't have the separation. Or what did you think of his physique?
I thought he looked fantastic. It's kind of really funny because when I was watching this version of Roadhouse, I was thinking back in the day, we looked at all of the action stars of the 80s films and we sort of thought, yeah, I want to look like Van Damme. I want to look like Arnold. I want to look like Dolph Lundgren. But I think maybe the kids these days maybe would also take the physique into account, but they'd also probably think, fuck, I want to be able to fight like these dudes as well, because they know that that's obviously where the real power is these days. And people can legit fuck people up these days if they know martial arts really well. Whereas back in the day, martial arts kind of really wasn't, it was still very on the periphery.
You know, people are always asking me why I don't like train and fighting anymore. And you get to a certain point in training and fighting where it's like, yeah, you could devote your entire life to this, and then you could then you could beat up the other three people out of 100 that you couldn't beat up after a couple of years of fucking around with it and just staying in shape. Like, it's just the people who devote their lives to try to be the toughest guy on the planet. I would just like to give you this little bit of advice since I'm 47. The people will never stop challenging you. So the idea that you will at some point have proven you're the toughest will literally never happen. It never, ever will happen. And it doesn't matter how many people you beat up. Yeah, there are always going to be 1,000 more people to beat up.
I know that you have a bit of a fighting background and you've had your fair share of scraps, but when you went out, you know, to a bar or to a club, did you attract fights?
No. I am not really much of a bar fight guy, honestly. But in the South, I don't do well in the South, and I don't have a Southern accent, and I read books, and that really upsets Southerners. And because I hate them so much, I would always say something fly a shit back. So it would always be something like, "Oh, you're reading because you don't because you think you're better than us." And I'm like, the fact that I'm reading has nothing to do with me being better than you. But I am, and the South will never rise again. And do you want to fucking fight? So it was kind of like that. I would be quietly reading at a bar until somebody spoke to me, and then I'm like, yes, I would like to fight this entire bar. Let us do this. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of books, sorry.
I probably should not have fought as much as I did in the past, but like comparing my 90s and early aughts fighting with the frequency and psychosis of what was going on in the 80s when they were literally just filled with cocaine cocaine and D-ball were what they ate. So these people were just in street fights from the time they woke up to the time they went to bed. They probably couldn't breathe out of their nose at all. Everybody, the snoring that must come out of these people must have been horrific. I did not say a violent and successful thug, but I didn't see what was the comment before that.
Jamie be like Key?
I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure. Iron History says, who would win in a fight between you two? I think you've got me on that one, Jamie. Just through experience.
I don't know. I don't know your fighting background, but I don't know. I'm mean. I really, really try not to fight anymore. It's one of I don't leave the house a lot anymore because I'm so aggro. So I just try to stay the fuck home. No amount of alcohol would make it seem like a good idea. No, people. I don't even want to get punched in the face anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find that the aggression's kind of slipped out of us as we get older. When we're young, we're kind of pissed off about everything. But as we get older, we kind of let things slide a little bit more. We're not really trying to challenge or spit in the world's face anymore. So I don't know about it. If that's the same with you?
Well, I'm glad it's worked out. I'm glad it's worked out for you that way. I'm glad. I'm glad somebody's slowing down. Somebody has to.
Speaking of books, mate, your Huge Natty Arms is out. It came out on the weekend. It's a fantastic read. People that haven't picked it up yet, you really need to get onto this because, well, tell us a little bit more about it, Jamie. Just give us like a one-sentence spiel because it's probably best coming from your mouth about why people should buy this book.
All right. So here's my one. Okay. If you look at any bodybuilder from right now and you compare them to any bodybuilder from the 1970s, you will see a vast difference in the way their arms and their shoulders look. And the great deal of their physique comes from the difference in right here and the difference in right here. And what I realized is the bodybuilders of those eras used very different exercises and volumes in order to achieve the physiques that they achieved. And the reason that we don't look as good as the people of that time period did is because we're using the wrong exercises. And the book, Huge Natty Arms, it really started as a refutation of the idea that you can't build big arms naturally, because I've written about so many fucking guys that did. And I'm not saying I'm some kind of natty guru. I'm just saying the people who are telling you can't are just fucking lying to you because they want you to be small. And I can't fucking stand that. And if I've got all these examples of all these people with huge fucking arms, people that built 19 and 20-inch cold measured arms, and everybody measures pump now. Tell that story real quick about Arnold with Arthur Jones.
Arnold went down to Arthur Jones's compound, and Arthur Jones was legit measuring all the bodybuilders' arms. And Arnold, who used to profess that he had 21 or 22-inch biceps, Arthur Jones measured them up legitimately, and that was smaller than Sergio's, Sergio's measured in at 20.5 inches, but Arnold's only measured in at 19.5, something like that. But apparently Arnold got really pissed off about the whole fact. And after being put through a few of the Nautilus workouts, he stormed off out of the compound saying, fuck HIT.
Well, fuck HIT for sure. But, I mean, you can tell Arnold's arms were smaller than Sergio's in every photo that was ever taken. And then there's that one with the lineup with Kalman or Staslak Kalman or whatever the fuck his name is. And his arms make the rest of them look like they're in a different weight class from that man.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they don't. So we've been lied to, and people are overinflating their measurements, and people are just like pounding this idea into you that you're like genetically doomed to be weak, which doesn't make sense from an evolutionary standpoint, if anything else. So people are talking about genetics in stupid ways and just justifying the fact that they have small arms, which is why you and I probably didn't train arms for 5 to 10 years of our lives. Because we got it through the big movements. Yeah, that's why our arms fucking suck now. So we need to get on this old time natty shit and get our arms in order, because it's sad.
Well, because we've got a 4-day weekend this weekend, I'm committing one of those days to the infamous 1-day arm cure that we talked about last week as well. I'm going to hit you up with some advice on some exercise selection. I'm going to do everything scientifically. I'm going to get the fucking tape measure out, measure them cold, measure them pumped, and then devote a whole day to training arms, and then we'll come back next week and see if these pitiful arms grew at all. I shouldn't.
Well, you got to do it for 4 days, because the whole point is you do it for it's a 12-day period, and you train arms 6 times, and then each day for a 12-day period, and then you get an inch to an inch and a half on your arms in that, and that workout's in the book. Perry Reader's 2-week arm cure. Ozempic Hollywood arms is definitely what we do not want. Have you seen, who was it, 50 Cent? I haven't seen. So not only does he not lift weights anymore, but he's on that Ozempic, so he looks tiny. He's got this massive head, and he's just this tiny little man now.
Oh God, yeah, they all like to jump on the next bandwagon that comes out, don't they? And Ozempic seems to be it.
Well, unless you're P. Diddy, in which case you're jumping on a plane to run away from every federal agency there is. Have you seen that news?
I have not seen it. No.
Gun charge, ATF's after him, the DEA's after him, the FBI's after him. He's sex trafficking, dealing drugs, and he has illegal weapons. This man's never coming out of jail. P. Diddy's going to be in jail for the remainder of his life. And he fled the U.S. government. He's in the Bahamas, but he pretended to land in the Bahamas and then went to Antigua. Oh, he got caught? Yeah, it's fucking over. He's done. He is done.
I'm completely out of the loop. I don't watch any TV.
They arrested his drug mule at the Miami airport yesterday. That guy immediately turned state's evidence. Diddy was a pawn. A pawn by who? And Diddy was Epstein. He might as well have been Epstein. Shit. He's got all kinds. They got Epstein type charges on him. They got everything. This man has done every evil deed he could do.
Speaking of Diddy and 50 Cent, you've got another book coming out about black bodybuilders, the best bodybuilders of all time. Do you want to give us a quick spiel on that one and what people can expect with that?
I don't know when that one's going to drop, because I got to get this book treatment done so I can get a book deal so that I can continue doing this and not just rage quit life and delete everything I've ever written. So I'm gonna do a steroids book first with Greta. Greta and I are going to do that. She's already done a cookbook, and she's a food historian. So she's going to add her knowledge to what I've already done with steroids, and we're going to give you guys the best fucking steroids book you could have ever imagined. And then I've also got a book coming out after that called Nothing Can Stop Me, about black bodybuilders.
When is your books coming out in print? Because I want your book sitting on my fucking library shelf up here, the full compendium, And I reckon you should rewrite Issuance of Insanity, all 3 volumes, but update it for the new era of bodybuilding of what we're in. Because you said that there were some things in there that you would like that you would change. So maybe you could rewrite some of the things. Yeah, and put it out again, under your own new banner. That would be fucking
I'm trying to like wrap all that stuff into new material and repackage it and put it out in a different way. Because I don't like my old self. I really genuinely hate myself from like 2019 previous. So it's tough for me to appreciate my work the way you guys do. But Mel is working on, my wife is working on doing the print stuff, and she's going to be up in Connecticut for 2 weeks with her job. So she's literally just going to be doing print conversion the entire time.
Yeah, or even like just print to automate, because I know that some people, when they independently print books.
Oh yeah, they just have to be formatted they got to be formatted first so they don't look like shit, and also so that it cuts down on the amount that has to be printed and it doesn't cost $1 million, because those print to order books are so expensive.
All right, yeah. Well, if you need anybody to run their eyes over the final print version, the final versions or anything before they send them to the printer, just send them to me and I'll help you out with any copy reading. So
absolutely,
I'm your man. But I really want to thank you again, because it looks like we've come up on time at the moment, but you're always extremely educational and entertaining at the same time. And that's the best kind of podcast guest to be. People love seeing you. Every week I get all the comments, more Jamie, more Jamie. So,
well, I'm going to drop a little, I think it's alive, but I'm not certain because I don't think I heard back from him last night, but I'm doing a podcast with Range of Strength on his YouTube in an hour. And, I'm going to give I'm just going to give the teaser right now, but I'm going to tell you guys the origin of the rebounding pullover. And if you've never done a rebounding pullover, it's an exercise you do in the gym, but it was published in a 1951 article and repeated over and over that the origin of this exercise occurred while 2 men were laying in bed together and they didn't want to get out of bed to lift weights. And their wives were in a different room altogether. So if you guys want to understand how incredibly gay lifting used to be, because my mind's still blown. I thought this was a fucking goof. And I just kept researching and I was like, it just gets gay with every other word. It's crazy. It's crazy. So Range of Strength on the next one.
I can't wait to see the video. I can't wait to see the video demonstration of that exercise that you've got planned for us, Jamie. So
I still cannot believe people were lifting weights in bed, but the 50s, amphetamines are a hell of a drug, and nobody has ever been straight on amphetamines. And I'm just going to keep repeating that because people try to pretend like Adderall is not giving them weird ideas. But if you're on Adderall, I'm sure you've had some odd ideas in your life. So.
Hell, I've been reading a really interesting book recently called Dr. Feelgood. It's about that doctor that escaped from Nazi Germany. He was Jewish, but he basically served all of the celebrities and politicians, including JFK. He was basically the fucking guy behind JFK getting shot. Once you delve into this story, but if you want to hear about,
because everybody was just filled with amphetamines.
Yeah, basically, and he was supplying every kind of big name person back in the day on it. It's by Richard Letzman, and it's what's his name? Jacobson. That's all I can kind of remember his last name. Dr. Max Jacobson. So if you ever want a really interesting story about how methamphetamines fucked up a whole generation of celebrities and politicians, jump on that.
I'm going to have to, because I put a drug timeline in my new book, Huge Natty Arms, which you guys should all get. But there's a drug timeline in there that tells you the release of every steroid, and we know which bodybuilders used which steroids at which times. It was public knowledge, and I put it in the fucking list so you guys can stop. Yeah, it does sound like somebody's fapping. I don't know where that's coming from. My hands are right here. But but like, you guys can stop speculating and stop saying like, oh, the steroid era started in blah, 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 because we actually know when it fucking started. And I put it in the book. So
that's what I really loved about the book as well, because you get really granular behind the whole steroid era and you break it down to a timeline. So there's no more fucking debate. There's no more speculation. It's in the book. You can tell like which guys are on steroids and which ones are not, and when what was used. I think that was really well done, and it was very unique that no other books are printed so far. So just for that alone, guys, fucking go out and get Jamie's books. And yes, Justin Paul, we do need another cookbook, and Greta is on it apparently, and I can't wait.
Yep, we're getting it. It's coming. The steroids are coming. It's all going to be piled into one book. I got them right here. Jazz hands. I'm going to keep them up. I don't know what to do with my hands.
I'll let you go, Jamie, because you've got to get onto that next interview, and I'll let you prepare.
Yeah, and I'll have the laptop next time, so then I will have camera and mic and the internet all working at the same time. We're going to do this.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks again for coming on. Thanks, everybody, for their comments and questions. We love doing these, and we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.